Assalamualaikum, my group and I will presenting the topic that we choose, which is managing personal financial statement and budgeting and consumer credit.
What is consumer credit? Consumer credit is personal debt taken on to purchase goods and services. A credit card is one form of consumer credit. In other words, consumer credit, also known as consumer debt. Consumer credit is extended by banks, retailers, and others to enable consumer to purchase goods immediately and pay off the cost over time with interest. Consumer credit can be divided into two classifications, which is installment credit and revolving credit. Installment credit is used for a specific purpose and is issued at a defined amount for a set period of time. Payments are usually made monthly in equal installment. Installment credit usually offer lower interest rate than revolving credit as an incentive to the consumer. The item purchased serves as collateral in case the consumer default. While for revolving credit includes credit card may be used for any purchase. The credit is revolving in the sense that the line of credit remain open and can be used up to the maximum limit repeatedly as long as the borrower keeps paying a minimum monthly payment on time. In fact, never be paid off in full as the consumer pay the minimum and allow the remaining debt to accumulate interest from month to month. Because of not secured by collateral, revolving credit is available at a relatively high interest. Next, the benefit of consumer credit is allow consumer get an advance on income to buy product and service. In an emergency, such as a car breakdown, that can be a lifesaver because credit cards are relatively safe to carry and can purchase large or small items.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Nora Inafika binti Wan Effendi, and today I would like to explain about the purpose of consumer credit. The first one, a consumer credit system allows consumer to borrow money or incur debt and to defer repayment of the money over time. Having credit enable consumer to buy goods or assets without having to pay for them in cash at the time of the purchase. The next one, consumer credit is money that consumer can borrow to pay for good or service. Access to credit allow consumer to make purchase today and then pay for them over a period of time. Last but not least, consumer credit is type of borrowing that used for finance personal expenses such as buying a car or paying for education. The purpose of consumer credit is provide individual with funds necessary to make large purchase or cover unexpected expenses.
Next, I'm going to explain the importance of consumer credit. Firstly, consumer credit helps the majority to buy product and services. For example, a house or a car that is usually impossible to pay all at once. Hence, this consumer credit will give access to the majority to purchase the things they need right away and pay for them later, as several department shops and vehicle dealerships provide convenient financing solutions to their customers, such as deferred payments and cheap interest rates. On the other hand, it gives customers more spending options, benefits, and awards. The most significant benefit is the financial flexibility, which became popular during COVID-19 due to its easy approval process and flexibility at a time when people needed urgent help with a cash flow. Secondly, consumer credit helps business transactions to take place efficiently and leads to the economic growth. Credit helps companies have access to tools that they need to produce the things that we buy. A business that doesn't enter into credit might not be able to buy the machines and raw goods or pay the labor needed to produce products and to make the profit. Lastly, it enables users to make better time investment due to its flexibility. If users manage credit correctly, they potentially might gain a lot of benefits. Cardholders are frequently rewarded with cashback deals, frequent flyer miles, and reward points when they are using credit cards.
Hi, my name is Nurhaizatul Nina binti Hamzah. I will be explaining about consumer credit current issues. So the first current issues regarding consumer credit, CCA in Malaysia has been aimed to create a framework for credit service providers to protect consumers from unethical usage practiced in the process. Consumer Credit Oversight Board Task Force was supported by the Ministry of Finance, Bank Negara Malaysia and the Securities Commission Malaysia. They issued a public consultation on Paper 1, seeking feedback and comments from the public on the proposed Consumer Credit Act to consolidate the credit industry regulatory framework. The Ministry of Finance also has been active in promoting a reliable and confidence-inducing consumer credit ecosystem to protect consumers from unregulated entities. This initiative was first announced by the Minister of Finance during the 2021 Malaysia Budget speech. Their objectives in regulating CCA are very clear. It is to establish an authorization on framework for non-bank entities that carrying on the business of providing credit, and then to offer a true and consistent framework for credit consumer protection by the enforcement of basic norms of behavior on credit issuers. They also want to create a framework for effective surveillance and supervision and enforcement to prevent and punish unfair, unethical and predatory behavior. In Australia, a survey has shown that the users of buy now pay later have increasing, especially among young people. According to Reserve Bank of Australia data, the number of active BNPL accounts in Australia increased from 5 million to 7 million in the fiscal year of 2021 to 2022. More Australians use digital payment services than ever before, with 77% saying tap and go was preferred over cash. While the BNPL market is unregulated, despite it acting very much like credit, the government announced in November 2022 it aims to introduce regulation in 2023 with the same goals as other countries. Australia also aims to standardize same type of responsible lending standards to credit service as banks. Meanwhile, in USA, the numbers of consumer credit have been increased with annual rate of 6.4%. Total consumer credit in the United States increased by 27.1 billion in October 2022. The current levels of consumer debt show that the Federal Reserve raising rates has not slowed down consumer borrowing, while consumer credit declined in the years immediately after the 2007 to 2009 financial crisis. Since the second quarter of 2011 until the second quarter of 2022, consumer credit outstanding has increased by 90%. Also of concern should be that while borrowing continues to go up, Americans' saving rate has declined significantly in the last 2 years.
This is a statistic consumer credit in Malaysia. Based on the land show data for Malaysia from December 1996 through September 2022, with a minimum of RM 56.74 billion in December 1996 and a maximum of RM 452.89 billion in September 2022. Malaysia average value over that time was RM 238.6 billion. It shows that in 2022, consumer credit is increasing when there is a pre-pandemic in Malaysia. Bank Negara Malaysia data, it has been shown that credit card arrears increased by RM 35.89 billion in July, and the highest amount was in February 2020, which was RM 38.05 billion. This is due to the occurrence of inflation, which has made consumers need to spend more due to the increase in the price of daily necessities. Next is the statistic consumer credit in Australia. The line above show data for Australia from January 1990 to September 2022, with a minimum of $26.04 billion in August 1994 and a maximum of $127.78 billion in July 2019. Australia average value during that period was $73.81 billion. We can see that the line decreased from 2021 to 2022. It is because there is buy now pay later, and it's not enough to compensate for the weak consumer spending, which causes a continuous decline in credit card applications. Due to the declining demand, this is also a factor in the increased rate and the uncertainty of the effect that exists on the market, which affect the behavior of consumer, potential home buyer, and mortgage holder. Lastly, statistic consumer credit in the United States. Based on the line above, show data for the US from January 2004 to October 2022 with a minimum of 669.32 billion US dollar in March 2004 and a maximum of 1,824.36 billion US dollar in October 2022, and it showed the average value for the US during that period was 1,144.95 billion US dollar. In 2022, showing an increase in more US consumer in debt than in the previous year. It is a record-breaking US consumer credit that has collected 4.7 trillion US dollar after the financial crisis in 2007 until 2009. Consumer credit still increased by 90% in 2011. Revolving credit increased a lot at an annual rate of 18.1%. This includes personal and small business loan, although there are payment delay, but the situation is still under control because no inflation, high cost loan, and no problem of high unemployment rates.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and hi everyone. My name is Nurul Syafiqah binti Muhammad Zamari and my student ID is 20204-73714. Hi, I would like to explain the disadvantages of consumer credit. Okay, the first one is the desire to spend too much. This meaning by credit makes it possible for you to pay for unforeseen expenses and buy necessities. But it is also makes it far simpler to get your hands on expensive items you don't need. For example, make an installment for buy the iPhone just to follow the trend. The second disadvantages of credit consumer is credit is moreover that it is expensive. This can be shown by when you borrow money that you don't need. It's called using credit. Thus, this thing can drive consumer to overspend the money to buy the unnecessary item. Of course, the consumers need to pay the charges fees first, then any remaining fund should be paid off to the entire balance. Regarding the Experience State of Credit 2021 report, the article said that the COVID-19 epidemic hit hard 21 months ago, which is an extraordinary amount of time. Many Malaysians were forced to spend months at home as a result of the subsequent phases of movement control orders, MCOs. The epidemic has had a significant negative impact on Malaysia's economic, reversing growth and leaving many customers in precarious financial situations. As Malaysians manage the unpredictable conditions around employment and the economy, this has led to the financial health taking center stage.
As the conclusion, it is important to acknowledge the industry's significant contribution to the national economy, particularly in the term of providing credit to society. More has to be done despite the fact that recent changes to consumer credit rules regarding activity like money lending and provoking appear to strengthen consumer protection. If there is no enforcement by the appropriate authorities and no public support, all the revision will be useless. Adoption of the proposed Consumer Credit Act, which will oversee all consumer credit regulation in the nation, is recommended. Similar to the protection the consumer in the nation receive, this act will give consumers stronger protection.
Okay, it's time for the recommendations of consumer credit. The first one is, consumer credit must be provided equitability and responsibly as much as possible in order to reduce overspend and related issues. The bulk of consumer finance transactions are structured as hire purchase, even though there might also be conditional sales or credit sales. Okay, for example, for specific transactions, payment is split into two categories: down payment schemes and deposit link schemes. Okay, first, the down payment of between 15% to 25% of the total asset value is needed for deposit-linked scheme in the form of an initial deposit. Okay, the second one is in order to increase protection for Malaysian consumer of credits, the government is drafting a Consumer Credit Act, which is CCA. This covers the oversight of new credit products like buy now, pay later suppliers. Okay, the last is the consultation document, which is anticipated to be released in the fourth quarter of this year, will come after this and provide additional information on the authorization, governance and conduct standards that will be applied to financial institutions and credit providers. That's all from me. Bye.